The committee reviewed the prevailing adverse conditions in the global economy, such as the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic and the oil price shock, as well as the likelihood of continued oil price supply glut in the near future, focusing on the impact of these headwinds on the Nigerian economy. Committee observed that not only will the COVID-19 pandemic result in a health crisis, it will also result in massive economic crisis that will plunge many countries into recession, including the leading industrialized countries. The NPC took into cognizance the impact of the decline in oil prices on accretion to external reserves and the emergence of exchange rate pressures. Committee thus commended and endorsed the management of the bank for its prompt response with the adjustment of the exchange rate to uniform market rates and remove distortions. It, however, took note of the likely impact of the exchange rate adjustment on the economy. The committee noted the weakened revenue position of the federal government arising from the sharp drop in oil prices. It reiterated the need for government to urgently reduce reliance on oil revenue by gradually diversifying the economy and improving tax collection. To this end, MPC noted the speedy response of the federal government to the oil price shock by the revision of the 2020 budget downwards by 1.5 trillion naira and the oil price benchmark to $30 per barrel. However, MPC urged the National Assembly to avoid the tendency to increasing the benchmark price of oil in the federal budget, as this usually results in the adoption of unrealistic budgetary estimates. In addition, committee noted the introduction of price modulation, resulting in reduction in the pump price of PMS from 145 to 125 naira per liter, and its contributory effect in boosting aggregate demand, lowering inflation, and improving the wealth of the low income in the society. The MPC further noted the persistence of inflationary pressures attributed to a combination of monetary and structural factors, and thus urged the federal government to leverage on the public-private partnership, PPP, to intensify investments in infrastructure to increase output and employment. The committee cited the potentials for foreign direct investment flows to the Nigerian auto manufacturing, aviation, and rail industries, which could take advantage of these viable and untapped domestic and regional markets. The committee noted the sustained improvement in the financial soundness indicators, applauding the continued decline in the ratio of non-performing loans, growth in assets of the banking system, and profitability of the industry in the light of increasing global uncertainties. It also recognized the success of the bank's loan-to-deposit ratio policy and its potential to alleviate production shortfalls, reduce unemployment, and boost aggregate demand, urging the bank to pursue this and other related policies to a conclusive end. MPC underscored the coronavirus pandemic as a public health crisis, which will continue to undermine any monetary and fiscal stimulus unless appropriate measures are taken to test, isolate, curtail the spread, and treat infected persons while ensuring that migration across country is prohibited. The MPC therefore called on the federal government to take the necessary steps to safeguard the population through close monitoring and emergency-ready measures to identify and care for infected persons in the country, including compulsory restriction of movement to curtail spread of the pandemic. On the choices before the committee, MPC noted the recent actions of the bank targeted at strengthening the resilience of the financial system and alleviating the initial impact of the crisis. In its wisdom, committee felt that tightening will result in reining in the rising trend in inflation, and that it will support reserve accretion. However, it will reduce money supply and limit deposit money banks' credit creation capacity, thus resulting in increasing the cost of credit with adverse impact on output growth. Tightening would also result in a reduction in aggregate demand, as a fall in disposable income will result in output compression, whereas at this time, policy emphasis should be on stimulating aggregate supply and demand, both already weakened by COVID-19. With respect to loosening, whereas the committee felt it would stimulate the economy in the short term and boost aggregate supply and demand, the committee nevertheless was of the view that there was a need to be cautious in loosening, given the fact that it will exacerbate an already worsening inflationary condition, resulting in massive pressure on reserves and the exchange rate. Based on the balance of this argument, the MPC, in taking note of the recent actions already taken by the management of the bank in response to the COVID-19, resolved to allow time for the measures to permeate the economy while allowing the pandemic to wear out its plateau before deciding on further supporting policy measures to boost and strengthen aggregate demand and supply in the recovery phase of the economy. The choice to hold also considered the subsisting loan-to-deposit ratio and the DCRR policies, which sterilize excess liquidity in the banking system. Hence, an increase in the MPR would have been counterproductive. The monetary policy stance arrived at this meeting took cognizance of the need to address the unfolding unfavorable macroeconomic developments, reigning in inflation, support growth and employment through the extant interventions and recent initiatives, check capital outflows, and support external reserves creation, and dampen pressure and ensure foreign exchange market stability. A review of the policy options indicates relative tightness of the current monetary policy stance. The CRR was increased at the last MPC meeting. Time is required for its full effects to be manifest. Increasing the MPR will be contradictory to the recent reduction of interest rates in the CBN intervention programs from 9 to 5%. Besides, an increase in MPR will be taken by the deposit money banks as an invitation to increase lending rates, and this will be most undesirable at this point in time when efforts are being made to avert a recession. Besides, a reduction in MPR will not make the DMBs to reduce lending rates, but other strategies of the CBN are making the DMBs to reduce lending rates in furtherance of growth objective. Committee's decision. Committee noted the continued rise in domestic prices, the glut in oil supplies, and low oil prices in the wake of the current global shocks, exchange rate pressure, and other domestic monetary and fiscal responses to the evolving crisis. In view of the foregoing, the committee decided by a unanimous vote to retain monetary policy rate at 13.5% and to hold all other policy parameters constant.